if you get rid of the tattoos and all that stuff, he looks like just the regular dude at the barista. He looks like a barista, right? He looks like the guy who's making your coffee.
Yeah.
Now you add the tattoos. Now you give him an edge. So now you have like this nerdy looking.
Everyone looks good in a pink Lamborghini. What's up, everybody? Laura Sanko here, joined as always by Coach Dean Thomas. Got a different background. Where are you right now?
I am in Bristol, Connecticut. I'm still at the hotel. Now, when I checked into this hotel, I was wearing the exact same hat that you have on right now. And the guy who checked me in was like, yo, that is a badass hat. I was like, listen, that's that Laura Sanko special. It
That's
got
right.
The rips in the front, the one-on-one. That's the Jones right there.
That's right. That's how they know you've been through some stuff. You've seen some life when you got the fray on the edge of your hat.
No one likes a clean uniform.
No. We putting in work over here.
That's right.
This is the work. This is the work right here. Well, I just appreciate your time and your busy schedule. Like between me filming Contender Series and other stuff I got going on, and you doing tough recaps, and then being in Bristol, like it was a miracle that we made this happen. And it was a miracle on your part. So thank you.
No, it's a miracle that we alive. We working, you know what I'm saying? We working, we spreading love, we spreading information. So I'm blessed, and let's give it to him.
Let's give it to him. UFC 292, and we got the Bantamweight belt on the line. Of course, champion Aljamain Sterling. Now, finally, I feel like getting some respect. We're starting to get some GOAT talk about him in terms of this, the history of this division. And Sean O'Malley, the rising star that's kind of been breathing down his neck for a while now. Just initial thoughts on this fight before I go through some of the stats.
I mean, initial thoughts. I mean, Aljamain is the man. Yeah. And I'm using that term, the man, for a reason, very specific reason, because I feel like if he gets his hands on Sean O'Malley, he will look like a man versus a child. But I do think Sean O'Malley will be prepared a bit more than maybe I've given him credit for in the past when thinking about this fight in particular. Sean will do his homework. He trains hard. He's a real martial artist. And I think it'll be a better fight than we anticipate. But I still think that it should be pretty one-sided in favor of Aljamain Sterling.
Well, I know a lot of people agree with you, but let's, before we get too much into the X's and O's, I want to talk a little bit about some of these stats, because they definitely paint an interesting picture. I mean, as we know, numbers don't always, show us the entire picture, but I think they can illuminate some really interesting aspects that we might see play out. Of course, we've got Aljamain Sterling, 15-3, 15-3 in the UFC, 2 knockouts, 4 submissions, 8 decisions. And then we've got Sean O'Malley, 8-1 in the UFC, 1 no contest, 5 knockouts, and 3 decisions. So a little bit more finishing in terms of Sean O'Malley's game there. Sean obviously has a bit of a height advantage. He's got 4 inches on him in the height department, only 1 inch in reach though. Aljo's got the pretty long arms for his height. And Sean O'Malley, the younger fighter by 6 years, where the stats I think get really interesting, and they're not necessarily surprising because we know Sean O'Malley, very clean striker, but I was actually pretty amazed to see his striking accuracy is 60.9%. And to put that in context, the UFC average is only 42%. So that's extremely high. And then you add in the level that he is landing 7.47 significant strikes per minute at that consistent rate. That's pretty crazy. That makes him a very dangerous fighter on the feet. Aljo coming in at 52.5% in terms of accuracy, still well above the UFC average, and 4.78 strikes per minute, significant strikes per minute, also, above the average and very busy. This is an interesting one as well. In terms of career knockdowns in the UFC, Sean O'Malley has 5. Aljamain Sterling has 0, but he has been knocked down 4 times. Sean O'Malley has never been knocked down. Again, not necessarily surprising stats, but I think maybe I was a little even more impressed with what Sean brings to the table than I had remembered. Now the script flips completely, of course, when you start looking at some of these grappling stats. Aljamain Sterling has landed 33 of 134 takedowns. He's relentless in the pursuit of the takedown. I always think it's funny when people talk about takedown accuracy percentage, because accuracy, it matters and it doesn't. It's really about tenacity. There should be a tenacity percentage there, because Aljo, as we know, tremendous wrestling. Sean O'Malley has a higher takedown accuracy percentage at 42.9%, but we're talking about he's landed 3 takedowns of 7. So quite a bit less looking to grapple on his part. Again, nothing overly surprising there, but I think I don't know. I guess I want to start with your thoughts on Sean, because we've talked about Aljo before on this channel, and all that he brings to the table. What do you feel like are some of Sean's best attributes? What has brought him to this point?
Well, his diversity. When I first saw Sean, it was actually he was working out with his coach Tim Welch in the UFC. I don't even know if he was signed to the UFC. He may have just gotten signed off of the Contender Series. And I said, man, this kid is really good. He's really slick. He looks good in all areas. So what he brings to the table is a tremendous amount of diversity and a tremendous amount of length and that accuracy that you talk about. Those are all going to be dangerous. Now, the numbers don't tell the full story in that, because the numbers reflected are very high for him. But there's a reason why they're that high. It's because the opponents that he's faced have all been strikers that stood in front of him. They tried to outstrike him. They couldn't move as well as he could. So he's able to use his diversity and his versatility on his feet and strike from different angles and just kind of sharpshoot those guys that he fought. If you look at the trajectory of all of his opponents, all of them have been shorter than him. All of them have been slower than him, and all of them have stood directly in front of him. They've gotten better, but they've all been essentially the same as he's moved up, all the way to Peter Yan. So that doesn't really tell a story for this fight. So which makes it difficult, because now that he's fighting Aljamain Sterling, who doesn't only move a lot, but he moves weird in a weird way. So in order for Sean O'Malley to be successful, he's going to have to predict or direct where Aljo was going to be, which is going to be very difficult. It's going to be easier for him to direct him than predict where he's going to be. So I think for Sean O'Malley, predicting or trying to direct where Aljo to be is going to be his hardest challenge.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting perspective, because I agree with you. Aljo has a very extemporaneous style. Like, you get the sense that, of course he's very well trained. He comes in with a plan, but quite a bit of, I feel like what comes to him, especially on the feet, is just sort of the moment reaction and free flowing decision making, I guess. And that makes him in some ways really difficult because of that funky style, because of the weird style. It does make it really difficult to make predictions about, certain patterns that he might have. I guess my question is, did the Yan fight not, maybe that's not a great way to phrase it, because that makes it a loaded question, but I'll say it that way anyway. Did the Yan fight not impress you that much in terms of how Sean O'Malley handled Piotr
No,
Yan?
in fact, it impressed me more. It showed that he had that dog in him, because when you look at Sean O'Malley, and which is what makes him so relatable and likable, is because if you get rid of the tattoos and all that stuff, he looks like just the regular dude at the barista. He looks like a barista, right? He looks like the guy who's making your coffee. Yeah. Now you add the tattoos. Now you give him an edge. So now you have like this nerdy looking.
Everyone looks good in a pink Lamborghini. Right. Everyone looks good.
So now you get this nerdy kid with an edge. Now he can fight. So there's so many things about him that make him an underdog, that make him so likable, that make you want to root for him. And then you put him in a fight with against a guy like Peter Yan, who is supposed to beat him up, who, said so many bad things about him. Then he goes in there, hurts Peter Yan with punches, takes his best shot, has a great fight with him, and then steals a decision. And in my opinion, I thought Peter Yan won the fight, but I wasn't mad that Sean O'Malley got the decision, because I was like, he gave me more than what I expected.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that from him. So he gave me more. So to give him the win, I was kind of like, Peter Yan should have put him away. He didn't. So go ahead and let the kid win. So I was impressed by his performance. Did I thought he'd win the fight? No, but I was impressed by his performance.
I was close with it. I actually did a video on this channel with about it, and pulling back the curtain a little bit. The truth is that I spoke to the judges that judged that fight, and they gave me some insight into like really specific exchanges and why they went a certain way, and why they ended up scoring certain rounds. And it honestly came down, I can't remember what round it was, but it came down to just, I'm talking the minutia of a couple of different exchanges and how those judges saw it. So it was a razor close fight. But I do think a lot of fans like yourself went away thinking, okay, maybe Sean does have this dog in him, because his resume has been weird. It's not necessarily that it's been bad, but it's been weird. And as you say, a lot of favorable matchups, a lot of strikers, you know, a lot of guys that are maybe a step slower than he is. But I think even within that, man, I love watching that guy strike. Love watching that guy strike. And I think one of the things for this fight in particular that he does so well, you know, we talk about lateral movement obviously is going to be key when you're facing wrestler and you're a guy who likes to fight long and stay on the outside. Sean O'Malley to me has some of the best footwork, specifically when it comes to moving laterally. He almost has that like the basketball, you know, ability to juke back and forth, back and forth. A lot of fighters don't have that agility and that. It's almost like a particular type of strength in their legs. A lot of fighters will only drift one way and then have a hard time being able to pull themselves the other way. And Sean is really tough to find when he wants to be.
And I'll tell you exactly why that is like that, because most fighters come from a wrestling background.
Yeah.
Now think of when wrestling season was in high school. It was during the same time as basketball season. So you had to make a decision. Were you going to play basketball or were you going to wrestle? And the guys who wrestled did that, and they can't play ball. And that's why you don't see a lot of crossover, which made the UFC basketball game very interesting when Jamal Hill got hurt, because he could ball, Phil Rowe could ball, but those guys didn't wrestle. But you look at the other guys who were out there who wrestled, they could not ball a lick. And that's probably because they wrestled.
I have never had someone bring up that point before. That is actually a really phenomenal point. And it attracts a very different type of athlete, right? You've got gross muscle movement versus fine motor skills. And that, you know, I could go on and on about that, but that's you make a really good point there. In terms of Aljo, is it as simple as he just needs to get a hold of him? I mean, do we need to overcomplicate it?
No, it's not that simple. And, you know, sometimes things are that simple, sometimes they're not. And maybe every time they're that simple, maybe every time they're not. See, that's the yin and yang of the martial arts, right? Is that it's always one thing that it's not. But it really does come down to, in order for him to win this fight, he's probably going to have to do it on the ground. I mean, I think that's pretty simple. But the fact that you know what you're getting into when you're fighting a guy like Aljamain Sterling, you can prepare for that. You can, and he's got fantastic jiu-jitsu coaches. He's got fantastic resources in order to get him prepared for what he's about to face. So it's not going to be as simple as just Aljo getting him down, then it's over. But I do think there are more intangibles to it. And I think the mentality that he's going into this fight with may not serve him well, because I think he's kind of banking on the fact that Aljamain Sterling is going to have a hard weight cut. And when you rely on something that negative, and uncontrollable, like you can't control that. Like it may be a bad cut, but maybe Aljamain Sterling is used to that, so you can't control that. So, and I have a feeling, because every time he talks about Aljamain Sterling, he talks about he's a big guy. He's going to have to cut a lot of weight, and I'm going to find his chin because he's cutting a lot of weight. Now it seems like you're starting to rely on that in order to be part of your strategy in order to win, but you can't control that factor. So I do stress that if Aljamain comes out and he's strong and he gets a hold of Sean O'Malley and he gets him on the ground, he's like, oh my God, this guy's a lot stronger, and he's not getting as tired as I thought, that could potentially break Sean O'Malley.
Yeah, and I think Aljo's particular style of grappling, because it's not just getting the takedown that he's so good at, it's what he does once he gets the takedown, and just his way of breaking people down and finding their back. I feel like the guys who are expert back takers are really, I don't want to say that, I will say that if they have all the other skills to back it up, you have to have all the other skills. It's a major advantage. You see guys like Grant Dawson, for instance, another phenomenal back taker. When you become a specialist in that particular narrow alley of grappling / jiu-jitsu, unless someone spends an inordinate amount of time training how to deal with your specific version of back take, man, is that hard to deal with.
Well, see, that's the thing, but this is where he can be prepared, because like getting to your back is one thing, and then being able to finish on your back is another thing, which is what Peter Yan did so successfully against Aljamain Sterling. Aljamain was able to take his back, but he couldn't finish because Peter Yan was absolutely prepared for that portion of it. He said, all right, I may not be able to stop the back take, but if you get my back, okay, I can chalk this round up. It's a 5-round fight, so I can chalk this one up. So I think that's kind of maybe perhaps what his strategy is going to be is like, you're not going to be able to stop all the ways he can get to your back, but once he gets there,
Yeah.
you can at least stop the finish and then reset at the beginning of the next round.
A bit like Volkanovski, you know, his ability to survive in those long exchanges. And quite frankly, you know, the judges are looking at different things, but it doesn't look good to the viewer when the guy who is in this super dominant position can't do anything with it. I remember when, you know, Volkanovski had him against his back. He's just doing this. He's like, you know, basically.
And actually, look, you know, it's funny how that works, because I always say, like, it's easier to close your eyes and punch somebody and hurt them than it is to actually get them down and take their back and be able to have it. It's harder to do that, but like closing your eyes, swinging as hard as you can and accidentally hitting somebody weighs more. You get more points for that, but it's harder to do the other thing.
I know, but you're out here trying to change the game, aren't you? That's a whole other conversation I need to catch up with you on. You went to the ABC convention.
I'm went to it. I'm part of the fight.
I know you part. I know you are.
So
You're part of
the. Yeah, we are trying. I'm trying to change things, because to me that's unfair. Like you should get more points for being able to take somebody's back. Like that should be like damage to me. Like if you're able to get somebody's back, it should be like doing damage, because you're investing into that and you've successfully did it.
Agree. I think there's a very simple test. And again, we're kind of going off on a rabbit trail here, but like I always ask myself, who would I rather be in this moment?
Yeah, no kidding. Like
that's how you know who's winning. Who would I rather be? Well, I don't want to be, you know, I don't want to be the guy in the body triangle being, you know, having my lungs crushed, no choices, even if the other guy's struggling to get the finish there. But we digress.
But can I pull back the curtain a little bit on
Aljamain Sterling? Yes, I would love that.
So we talked about, you know, his ability to take the back. So me and Aljamain, we're really close. We're really good friends. We're pretty close in terms of like from a training perspective as well. Like he sends me some of his sparring and we discuss it and talk about it and see what he could have did differently. And one of the things that I recommended him start doing was to going back to some of his old stuff, right? Like, you know, as you become a fighter, you start to go down this path of, this is what I do, this is what I do well, I'm sticking with this. So there were some things that he stuck with, and I said, listen, why don't you go back to some of this old stuff? Like incorporate more of your submissions into your game. And I think that would serve him well against a guy like O'Malley, as opposed to just relying on taking the back, but opening up his game more and having, you know, the threat of other submissions at his disposal. So that could also be a problem for a guy like O'Malley, who is long. And there's a lot to grab onto.
For
so
sure.
Like being a long guy like that against a guy who's a better grappler than you sometimes could be a tremendous disadvantage, because he's got a lot to hold on to.
There's absolutely no doubt that Aljo has the edge in grappling. Only to play devil's advocate for the sake of the channel, the image that popped in my mind that I want to at least remind people of in terms of Sean O'Malley's grappling. Did you watch when he was on the Invitational and he wrapped up Takanori Gomi with a quickness?
Gomi's my age.
I know.
I know. Somebody brought that up the other day. I was like, Gomi is my age. Gomi came up in my time. That doesn't count.
Still, I'm just saying he's not.
I know.
He's not a lost puppy on the ground.
No, he's not. And that's one of the things that I also noticed when I saw him years ago before he was big time, was how good he was on the ground.
Yeah.
I said, this guy looks good everywhere. Like off of his back, he was very slick. His hips moved well, his legs moved well, great dexterity on top, good pressure. Just the way he looked on the ground was good. But that being said, Aljamain's just at a different level.
He is. He's an animal.
Level. Yeah.
All right. So paint a picture for me. How do you see this fight? How you see this fight playing out?
You know, because MMA is such a weird spectacle. It always plays out differently than what you expect it to be like. And it's always a scenario that you never pictured in your head. But this is what I picture, because this is a big high profile fight and O'Malley is such a likable fan favorite and Aljamain Sterling is such a bad guy. Aljamain is going to be very chaotic in the beginning, because I think it's going to be kind of some nervous energy. And Sean O'Malley's going to have his moments early. I think and the crowd's going to go wild and it's going to be crazy and O'Malley's going to be feeling himself. But then I think by the second round, the true fight is going to really tell the story. The true fight's going to expose itself. And that is that Aljamain Sterling is a better fighter than Sean O'Malley. Can Sean O'Malley win this fight? Absolutely. But Aljamain Sterling is a better fighter. And I think that the longer this fight goes, the more we're going to see that. But in the beginning, it's going to be chaotic and nervous and, you know, guys. But I think when they settle in, we're going to see that Aljamain Sterling's a better fighter. And I think he can submit Sean O'Malley.
You make a good point too that I meant to bring up earlier. 5-round fight, of course, and it's Sean's first 5-round fight. So that's, that's a tremendous change in terms of strategy and how you look at a fight, particularly when you are a guy facing someone who has the capability to really, really affect your gas tank. And when the gas goes, the lateral movement goes, and you just become, a sitting duck for more takedowns. So Sean O'Malley is going to have to be incredibly smart with how he approaches the way that he expends his energy in this fight, where he chooses to have moments where he chooses to maybe be a little bit more, patient, make his reads, be a little bit more tactical. That's a big ask.
Especially like you said, on the ground. Like on the feet, it won't be. Like he'll be fine. I'm sure Sean O'Malley could do 25
Oh,
rounds
sure,
on the
easily.
feet. But when he's going to be doing that up and down on the fence, and just Aljamain grabbing him and him trying to sneak a pummel back inside, it's going to be very difficult for him to choose his spots, because he's not going to be in control of when he chooses the spots. Aljamain Sterling will be, because Aljamain Sterling will be dictating all of that action. And it's hard to play catch up against a guy who's as good as Aljamain Sterling.
It is. If Aljo gets past Sean, do you think that this is his last fight in the division?
I really do. And I discussed this earlier with so many different people. A lot of people don't think that he's willing to give up those pay-per-view points, but I think he is. I think he will be, because like he don't really want to make this weight anyway. And there's something about the integrity that he has with his team, and those guys have, especially with Merab. The fact that Merab said, "Hey, listen, he's a champ, and I'm not fighting. He's my friend. I'm not fighting my friend." The fact that he did that, I think that Aljamain would pay him the favor to go, "All right, I'll give you an opportunity. I'll go up and wait, and you can have your opportunity to be champ too." I think he goes up and wait after this.
I think it's one of the most, I agree with you, first of all. And when and if that plays out, I think that has got to be one of the most underrated storylines in the history of this division, because I don't think people can fully understand what that means for Aljo to make the choice to take off the crown, give up all that money. And yes, he's going and chasing, new things in a new division, but the reality is he probably could have stayed there and, reigned in that division for a very long time. If this is indeed how it plays out, that to sacrifice that to give your best friend an opportunity that he deserves, like we don't see stuff like that this often. It's a very selfish sport usually.
It's a selfish sport. Like everything about this sport is selfish, and the people that it attracts. And not everybody is all that money hungry, especially when you come from like Aljamain Sterling's background. Like he came up with nothing, so he's used to having nothing. So he's already feels like he's winning, like he's already won. So to give back to his homeboy just adds to it, and that probably means more to him than another check. It probably really does, and people don't. You might not agree with it, and you might not be able to relate to it, but I mean, that's how it probably feels for him. Listen, this is what I do. I don't care about he obviously wants money, but it's his homeboy. So that's more than anything. That loyalty is more than anything.
It's a beautiful thing. You think Merab shows up and watches this fight in that red jacket?
I hope so. I hope he corners him in that red jacket. But I tell you, and I mean, those dudes are so tight, man. They're so close, and I just love it. And I was telling somebody today, I said that Merab and Aljo is the new Dean Thomas and Matt Serra.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. I love that.
Yeah, I might have to put that out on Instagram.
Merab might be one of the most unintentionally funny people ever as well. Like Sarah's got a big personality. Merab maybe not so much, but he is hilarious. Yeah. I love that duo. I love this fight. I absolutely love this fight. You guys are not going to want to miss it this Saturday in Boston, UFC 292. The man D Thomas will be there, cage side, offering up his golden nuggets of wisdom. I will be watching from home because I got Contender Series like a day after that. I'm in the midst of Contender, and that's basically all I'm doing right now. So you'll have to enjoy Boston without me, but I know it's gonna be a good show.
Oh, but hey, listen, I've been watching you on Contenders. You've been doing a fantastic job.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Dean, thank you so much for your time. And we'll talk about the co-main next.